Okay, so this is the recording for one of the two sessions for the rat dissection. This is what we call a blunt probe. Blunt probe. These are forceps, scissors, and then sometimes we use a scalpel. So to open up the specimen, and this is a male, you can see the scrotum, and then they have a retracted penis. So we don't want to disturb that. So we're going to pinch this up and cut. We need to cut through the skin and the muscle. We're going to use the forceps as a guide so we don't cut too far or too deep. We're going to cut straight up the middle till we reach the diaphragm. Then we're going to make two side cuts so we don't have to keep holding the body wall open. Okay, you'll notice there's fluid inside. Sometimes we rinse them out. Sometimes we can use paper towels to soak that up. Either way, we need to get rid of the fluid. And then we're going to lift this up and continue cutting. Don't cut your partner's fingers. Don't cut something you're going to need. Rats are small enough you can rotate them around. Now, sometimes they inject the blood vessels with dye. Oops, and that would add color. To the specimen. Once we visualize the diaphragm, we're going to make an opening. Now you don't want to have to cut the sternum all the way through. You want to cut the ribs. So you want to go to one side or the other. This is the xiphoid process of the sternum. Again, lifting up so you don't cut too far or too deep. We're also going to sever the diaphragm so that it looks intact. And you can see how it forms a wall between the abdominal cavity and the thoracic cavity. Sometimes you have to straighten your specimen up. We put the tines together and use it as a nudging tool. Again, you don't want to cut too far or too deep. You have to separate the upper limbs. You can see the heart. I need to go up into the neck. At this point, we probably usually have to break some of those ribs. Right now, kind of looks like a mess. See if I can get some more fluid out of there. One thing we're going to remove is some of this loose tissue. Again, usually you rinse this all out. We put it on the extra paper towels. So you can see the lungs properly, part of the pericardium, loose tissue. Sometimes you have too much pressure. Okay, for the lymphatic system, we mentioned the thymus, and that's what's covering up the heart. We typically remove it so you can see the heart underneath. You run your tines along the same direction as where the blood vessels, or if you use the blunt probe, then the tissue can move away and you don't cause too much damage and you still get to see things. Okay. Need to go a little bit farther in the neck. So for the respiratory system, you have the external nares out here. You have the trachea here. You can get a picture of the trachea. If you follow the trachea up, you can find the thyroid cartilage, and then this little brownish narrow area would be the cricoid cartilage. This is a blood vessel that we're going to cut. Because we want to view the bronchi. We come down here, we can typically find more of that pericardium, more of that loose tissue, but usually we can find the inferior vena cava, and that can help us remove the heart. So you need tension on the heart. Make sure you're cutting the heart and not lungs. There we go. And then again, you nudge the tissue. Here we can cut that so we can see the beginning of the primary bronchus leading into the left lung. Although it looks like we need another piece of the heart out of the way. So there's the bifurcation between the two primary bronchi. You can see the superior lobe of the left lung. There should be an inferior. Here you've got the superior lobe of the right lung, medial lobe of the right lung, inferior lobe of the right lung. Oh yeah, it must have pushed this inferior lobe of the left lung over. Sometimes it wraps around the inferior vena cava and looks a little off position, but it's part of the left side. Diaphragm, and that would get you your respiratory structures. The urinary system is going to be in the abdominal cavity. So you have the liver, the intestines, the spleen is humongous, especially compared to ours. This big dark thing. If we roll everything over, we can see the left kidney. You can see the renal capsule. This bulge is the adrenal gland. That's part of that renal capsule. We roll everything over this way. We can find the left kidney. Again, renal capsule. More of it's down here. In us, it's going to be covered. And then you have to try and find the ureter. Again, running your probe parallel to the structure. It blends in with the adipose tissue There's the ureter for the right side. We go back to the left. Again, being careful. Oh, here's a lymph node. Okay, ureter coming down. And in the pelvic cavity, if we're careful, we can expose the urinary bladder, which looks like a little bean. We don't want to tear up anything else, so we don't typically look at the urethra. But the opening would be part of the penis in the retracted penis, which is buried in this tissue. So that's what it looks like with a male rat. If we look at a female rat, again, pinching up the tissue, making a cut, getting through the skin and the muscle wall. We want a straight line up the abdomen, not going too far or too deep. Our cross cuts. Get rid of some of that fluid. And you want to cut it down so you don't have to keep holding it over. Turn the specimen to make our cut. Runs a bit cleaner in the abdomen. Okay, there's the diaphragm again. Again, we don't want to have to cut through the sternum. So we find that xiphoid process. We don't want to cut too far or too deep. We want to sever the diaphragm off. I'm going to go up through the neck. Again, breaking those ribs and clavicles. You got the heart and the lungs. A bit of excess tissue. So, diaphragm, superior lobe of right lung, medial lobe of right lung, inferior lobe of right lung, heart, superior lobe, left lung, inferior lobe of left lung. Again, the thymus, we pull it off so we can find the trachea. We follow the trachea up to the hard thyroid cartilage. We find the inferior vena cava, cut it so we can remove the heart. Sometimes it peels away, sometimes it doesn't. So there we've got the trachea, which is going to branch into the two primary bronchi, each leading to a lung. Again, respiratory system, diaphragm, liver, roll things over this way. So you can see the kidney, spleen again. Renal capsule. Kind of see the renal vein. Adrenal gland here. Renal capsule. You can see the ureter. And we get rid of the adipose tissue. We can see the urinary bladder. Get rid of more of that adipose tissue. There we go. I'm going to get rid of this muscle. Oh, we don't have to worry about that next time. So, urinary bladder, very tiny. Again, they have very potent, thick urine because they don't typically drink a lot. And that's the respiratory and urinary structures that you have to know on the rat.